We always wrap up our shows and our episodes with a little game that we call first, last, best, and worst.
Okay.
I'm going to throw a couple categories at you. You'll give me the first one you can remember, the most recent one, the last one, the best one to your memory, and then the worst one you can recollect.
Gotcha.
Sound good?
All right. Sounds good.
Let's do it. So how about the first, last, best, and worst speaking opportunities or speaking engagements you've had?
First, last, best, and worst speaking opportunities. Okay, so the first speaking opportunity that I ever had that I would actually classify as a public speaking opportunity would definitely be my first conference. There was a group, it was the National Association for Asian American Professionals, and they asked me to give a presentation about public speaking. And it was around crucial conversations. And that's a book that had been out at the time. So I read the book and learned about it and took away some of the points around public speaking and having those conversations. And I gave it and they loved it. And it was my first real professional feeling gig. So that was my first. The latest one that I had was College Possible.
Okay, yep.
Then the best that I had. That's a tough one. So in one of my workshops that I give, I have people just learn through improv, as we talked about a little bit before. Mm-hmm. And I call it my public speaking Olympics. And this was given in Taipei, Taiwan. And the group that got up, the volunteers, they just got into it. It was just a lot of reenactments and a lot of scenarios where they had to act it out through body language. And it was just a great group. A lot of laughter, and the 90 minutes just flew by. So I would think that that's the best, but it's definitely close. And then the worst. I would say the worst, and this is just from me being a perfectionist in terms of my craft. I was asked to speak at a college society, and I went in there. I don't want to say that I had a big head because I tried to deflate my ego every now and again, but I definitely didn't give it the same amount of preparation as I did for other presentations, and for me, it showed. And I just remember sitting in the back afterwards just saying, oh man, I totally bombed this. Even though they came up and said, oh man, you were great. Right. To me, I know that I didn't give them my best, and I always have that regret. If I have not given my best, that's going to just weigh on me for a long time. So that would definitely be my worst, just having people who ask me to do something for them and to speak at their event, and me just totally bombing, and I feel like I let them down.
Right. Yeah, and I can understand that. I mean, certainly when you feel like you could have prepared better, those are the biggest moments of regret for me as well. And I think that's a very entrepreneurial, inherent kind of characteristic.
Yeah.
Going back just really quickly before we continue, what are some of the methods you use to teach people through improv?
Yeah. So I use improv as a way for people to get out of their heads and just have fun. So just the basic rule of improv, don't overthink it. And just let out what comes out naturally.
Right.
And I think that is a key to authentic public speaking. Then other ways that you can do it. So I have this thing called the body language challenge. So I act out a story and I tell them just to act it out just in the craziest way possible. I want them to take it all the way to 1,000 feet high, with the thought process of if they know how to take it to those super high levels, and they'll know how to take it back down to more appropriate levels. But you have to know what over the top feels like.
You have to see what your limits are.
Exactly. You have to see what's over the top before you know how to bring it back down from the top.
Right.
So I use a lot of that just to make lessons about public speaking. And then with storytelling, it really helps because people have to just create stories on the fly. Mm-hmm. So there's a matter where I get two people side by side and I tell them to make a story. But every so often I'll give them a signal. The last word that comes out of the first person's mouth who's speaking has to be the first word coming out of the other person's mouth. and they have to tell a continuous story in that way.
Okay.
And that one gets a really interesting. But I use improv just to enforce different lessons about overall public speaking.
Right. It's great. It's brilliant. I think it's a great tool in general. Another thing, even if you're doing business development or sales, a lot of these skills are really transferable because you can use all of this prep and practice to really hone your sales pitch or the way that you're approaching your clients or however you're preparing for this interaction. So yeah, it's really good advice. So how about the first, last, best, and worst entrepreneurial challenges you've faced?
First, last, best, and worst entrepreneurial challenges. Okay. So the first, I'll take this all the way back to when I was about 6 years old, just selling rocks.
Is that like a pet rock kind
Oh,
of?
no, not a pet rock, just rocks.
Okay.
Just found them on the street, like, oh, this rock looks nice, I'll sell it.
Wow.
And it would be me and my friends, so we would sit on my porch, and the thing about my porch is that it had these little holes in them, so we would use it, like people would walk by and use it as like a drive-through to sell the rocks. So
How much were you selling these rocks for?
Oh, we'll probably sell the rocks for like $1.
Right, that's pretty good.
And then we would actually get some people in the neighborhood, of course, some just nice people that we knew, will come in and buy the rocks. And so that was the first time that I ever gotten into like the entrepreneurial spirit. So that was first. The best, I would say, is what I'm currently doing, because I feel that public speaking has become basically my life. It's something that I am deeply passionate about. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to start doing more on social media, kick off a YouTube channel, and really use that as a way to market myself as a speaker. So that way I can get into more of the keynote speaking. So that's the first, the best, and
the last one. And
the last. The last one. So the last one is actually tied into the worst one. So I got into a group, and just for privacy, I'm not going to mention so much about these individuals, but they asked me to become a part of their team, and at first it was really great, but then I didn't realize how much went into entrepreneurship. And then I really sat back and realized that this wasn't what I particularly wanted. It was an idea that a friend of mine had created, and I wanted to help out my friend. So I decided to come on board, but you can't be a part of somebody else's dream if you're not totally invested in it.
Yeah, if you're not passionate about it.
Yeah. So I had to leave from that situation and take a step back from that venture. And that made me feel guilty because he was a friend and I feel like I let him down. So there's always a matter of, I feel like I let somebody down, especially when I told them that I would do something for them. And I didn't give them my 100% best, but in that situation, I don't think I could have, because I wasn't 100% passionate about it, and I wanted to do my public speaking venture.
Right, that makes sense. And so with that, you've kind of learned about entrepreneurship as a whole and what your passions, strengths, weaknesses are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's really useful advice. So what advice do you have, just in concluding, what advice do you have for individuals like us who are looking to take their career to the next level, take their personal brand to the next level, get involved in public speaking, or even become a keynote speaker? Where should you start? How can you get involved in more speaking opportunities? What advice do you have for those individuals?
Yeah. So if you are interested in speaking, one thing that you should definitely do, especially in this information era, you need to get your ideas out into the world as soon as possible. And you can do that on social media. You can do that YouTube, Facebook, podcasting. Just get your ideas out into the world and have something that you are deeply passionate about. For me, I believe that public speaking can make a better world. I honestly 100% believe that. So I believe that if more people learn how to communicate better, then we will have a better, more peaceful world. So that is the message that I try to get out. and it's something that I'm deeply passionate about. So I feel that I can do this for the rest of my life if given the opportunity to do so. Then you have to practice the craft. And you can practice the craft in many different ways, but go out and actually speak in front of audiences about this. It can be a part of the Toastmasters International organization. There are chapters all over the world. It can be I also participate in what's called the Moth Story Slam. So people come in, they tell their stories for 5 minutes, and then they sit down.
Have you ever met Matthew Dix?
No.
No? Okay, so Matthew Dix wrote a book called Storyworthy, and it's about his Moth experience.
Interesting.
Being a part of the Moth Slams. I think he's one of the, if not the most successful Moth contestant. He wins Grand Slams a lot. He's very, very touted. He has a podcast about public speaking.
Oh, wow.
He wrote the book called Storyworthy and a few other books, and it's all about storytelling and the elements of storytelling. So, yeah, that's something to check out. Matthew Dix. I think he's based in Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken. I'll cut that if I am mistaken. The beauty of podcasting. But yeah, he's an excellent resource for public speaking and storytelling.
Awesome. Well, actually, 2 points to that. So one, I actually did experience a Moth Story Slam this past Monday.
Okay.
And
in Philly?
Here in Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually won it.
Wow.
So
Congrats.
I'll have the opportunity to participate in the Moth Grand Slam in May of 2020. So I have plenty of time to prepare.
So I think you'll meet Matthew Dix at the Grand Slam.
Oh, awesome.
And hopefully, you guys aren't butting heads.
Oh yeah, I hope not.
Not
But
butting.
then to the second thing that you mentioned is something that I would give people as advice. So is there somebody who's out there that is a proven veteran of the craft, of the art? Go out and learn from them. Somebody that you can resonate with. And the key is somebody that you can resonate with, because you can try to find a mentor or somebody to look up to who's totally not your style.
Right.
And that's going to set you back, because you're going to try to become somebody that you're not. But what you just talked about with Matthew Dix, I'm going to look up his book and I'm going to download it and I'm going to read it or listen to it.
Right. Yeah, I have the audiobook myself. So,
yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's really good. He talks a lot about. He tells a story about this night that he's out walking his dog, and his dog just kind of decides to venture off, and this whole story around how he has this moment with his dog at the end of the story. Sorry, spoiler alert. And it's a very special moment that resonated with him, and how journaling adds to your ability to create these moments in your life, but then also remember them for longer periods of time. You would otherwise lose these small moments that seem meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but are really special to you in that particular moment.
Sounds good.
Actually, the idea behind First, Last, Best, and Worst came from the book Storyworthy and from Matthew Dix, because it is essentially one of the tools that he talks about to use to get past those moments of writer's block or storytelling block, or when you're getting stuck and you don't know what to do. And yeah, he's a really interesting guy, someone I'm chasing down to be a guest on the podcast as well. So we'll see if this gets him to
yeah. Well, if it does, I'll be glad to say I'll be glad to say you're welcome.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. I think this was a fantastic episode. A lot of really great storytelling advice. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being a guest on the show.
All right. Thank you, Tony.